Hello everyone, this is part 40 of What If Naruto Was Abused and Trained by Madara Uchiha, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Your Majesty, Haisuke called out as he walked within the throne room within the king's palace. The throne room was the same as the one in the Crystal Palace. Their only difference was that this one had some lights put in, unlike the other one which had no lights. Entering into the hall, he saw the emperor sitting comfortably on his throne, head resting on the right hand, while the only visible eye, his left, stared into the empty space between them. The man was always like that for most times of the day. He didn't really deal with much, despite taking an active role as the emperor of the great imperial kingdom. Gurren still did much of the work as the prime minister of the kingdom, and other work was done by Nagato, who was the commander of all forces within the kingdom and a leader of the Rain country, not just the Omega Corps. Once Nagato received the Rinnegan, he hadn't wasted any time in securing control over every town within the Rain country, and removed the daimyo of the country. Ultimately, that made him ruler of the Rain country. Of course, he'd done so under Naruto's orders since the emperor had done the same with this country, while it was still called the Sound Country, a name given to it after it was seized by the manipulative snake, Orochimaru. The kingdom only expanded since the Rain was part of it. More to that, the kingdom became the most populated nation over the past 2 years, yet the emperor still had the time to spend most times of the day like this. Haisuke didn't have a problem with it though. For someone who had installed such a dynasty and whose sole name carried the empire to what it was, he deserved to deal away with trivial matters. Why should the emperor deal with little things when they could do everything in his place? What have you brought me, Haisuke? Naruto's calm voice questioned the man who was now on one knee while a bound shinobi was lying on his right side. The emperor's eye was only looking at the shinobi rather than his underling. Another one attempting to infiltrate the capital, Haisuke responded, glaring down at the man, Kiba, who was struggling to be free from his shackles. It wasn't the first time that the Jonin from Konoha attempted to infiltrate the kingdom in order to the emperor. The capital had grown so much that now it had become far larger than any other village. The walls had been built by Naruto were now just branded as the inner wall. More buildings had been rapidly built outside that wall just after the destruction of Konoha. Of course, with a large population, it didn't make it easy to keep everything tight like they used to. It was possible for spies to enter the village, but extremely hard to penetrate through the inner wall, which accommodated all important figures within the empire. It wasn't to say that no one was able to see through into the inner wall. Every now and then one managed to get in, as there were thousands of people who go in and out through the 5 gates of the inner wall. In cases where one managed to enter, they had to deal with this kind of situation. He didn't go far, but with each attempt, he takes a step closer, Haisuke continued, while keeping his eyes at the bound Jonin. This isn't the only who attempts to take your life, Your Majesty. Incidents have been occurring recently where have become brave in their attempt to take Naruto's life. They were from all over the elemental nations. The power of the Imperial Rice Kingdom was just becoming great. No, it was just great. Even though they weren't winning any battles over the past years, no village could challenge them on its own, and Naruto didn't even have to take part in the fighting for the defeat of enemies. Perhaps what gave these people confidence was the fact that there was a rumor that surfaced 9 months ago. The rumor was that the emperor was no longer godly anymore and had become just normal, beatable. What could have incited the rumor could be that the Sky Palace had disappeared during that time. Even though the people of the kingdom had been told that as long as that thing existed, no enemy would do them harm, they didn't waver in the faith in their king. No one casted any doubt in Naruto's power, yet the enemies were starting to doubt. Of course, Naruto only sponsored these ridiculous thoughts by not taking action against foolish villages that were sending her after him. Kumo and Iwagakure were active participants in all these mess, and didn't look like they were going to stop until Naruto was K. Konoha has been oddly quiet in the matter as it has been focusing on rebuilding and amassing its strength, at least that is what the rumors were saying. I see, Naruto simply said, not at all bothered by the threat to his life. While he may have stepped down a little with his god complex, he still didn't believe that anyone in this world could actually defeat him. He may no longer be the omnipresent sage, but he was still powerful. Haisuke frowned. It was always the same response the emperor gave whenever he came with such a matter before him. While the emperor may not be worried, it bothered him and he was bent on making a statement to the other nations. Your Majesty, you shouldn't allow such things to slide without punishment. The man in charge of security of the capital said, a bit strongly to let the message across. You think? Haisuke didn't know whether the man was being sarcastic or rhetoric. There were certainly times when he was like that, but you could never know. Only that blonde woman was the only who seemed to get it all times. She could probably even guess what he was thinking right about now. Perhaps if he called in the Empress, he would relent and allow him to take extreme measure. That woman was rather persuasive. Then again, the Emperor could be an immovable mountain when he wanted to be. Unbound him. I want to hear what he has to say to the Emperor. For all past 3 times the Jonin had made such attempts, he never bothered to talk to him, nor even spare it his time. He always instructed Haisuke to throw Kiba out of the borders of the country. Haisuke considered a few things for a few moments before relenting. What he did know was that Naruto wasn't requesting him. While on some occasions the easygoing emperor allowed him, Gurren, Nagato and Konan, especially Karen, to get away with a few things, there were some times when he didn't smile to them, and that was when he was sitting on that throne. As you wish, Heike. Once Kiba was freed, he stood still for a few moments. He glared at Naruto with so much hate that even surprised the emperor. Oh my, Naruto started, bringing in an amused look on his face, yet his posture didn't change. That kind of look brings back so memories. It certainly reminds me of that village I buried. Kiba growled. Look at his face, saying it so casually like he hadn't destroyed his home, the Inuzuka thought bitterly. It was an insult to him for Naruto, to speak of what he did to his former home so casually without any remorse for his actions, and it really enraged him to no end. You bastard. I will kill you if it is the last thing I do. Before he could even move, Haisuke's katana slid through his back before it was returned to its sheath. Kiba stumbled forward a little, wincing as he did at the pain now on his back. I will not allow you to speak to His Majesty in such manner. Haisuke barked in a tone that threatened to see the Konoha Jonin if he said something like that again. Kiba growled, narrowing his eye at the arrogant prick behind him for a moment. He looked back at Naruto, whose amused facade was now a distant memory. Shrugging off the pain, he dashed forward, straight at the Emperor, who didn't move an inch. But he wasn't allowed to get anywhere as Haisuke pulled him back by his right shoulder, twisting him. He followed this up by a knee to the gut. Once the Jonin had bended a little while clutching his aching gut, Haisuke grabbed Kiba by the back of his head and him down the floor by his face before stepping over him. Heike, allow me to this full. That would be the best course of action, Naruto said, appearing thoughtful. Haisuke knew that he wasn't exactly thinking about anything. He merely gave that look to give you the illusion that he was thinking about your request, but the answer wouldn't be what you want. Send him to the pit since it seems like he doesn't want to talk. Release him after a month. If this happens again, don't come to me. Do as you please. But that didn't mean that the answer wouldn't be satisfying. He knew well enough when Naruto said he could do what he wanted, it was as he said, he wasn't going to change his mind. Haisuke knew it too well that unless something happened, Kiba would return, and this time, he would eat him. Of course, they did nothing like public expectations as they did nothing but influence violence, which was something that Naruto didn't want. Gurren though, still disapproves of the idea. If she was the one doing them, she would probably mutilate him with her crystal in front of everyone who wanted to watch, while her expression became sadistic. The look was something that Haisuke had only seen once from that woman, and that time, he became a bit fearful of her. That look didn't chip happy to his spine, and with all the training Naruto made her do during the first 6 months of his time as an active king, she'd become really powerful. I will see to it, Haisuke stated, and picking up Kiba, but before he could leave, the before-mentioned woman walked into the hall. Haisuke couldn't stop himself from staring at her. She was 5 to 6 months pregnant. The thing that had the guys back at HQ making bets was who the father of her child was. It was a secret that had become a mystery to everyone on who the father was. Bets were being made on 3 likely suspects who spent much time with her before it became apparent that she was pregnant. But Gurren wasn't telling one anything, and she did well to hide the identity of the man who knocked her up. Some even entrained the idea that she was carrying the child of the emperor, but no one could prove it, and since the emperor showed no affection to any woman, it was a hard case to make and no one really said it aloud in fear of being melted by the empress. Such a rumor was blasphemy in the ears of the empress. Haisuke didn't believe such a rumor though. He'd done a search into Guren's life and found two men who were the likely suspects. He'd even laughed when he heard of it. Out of all his men, no one other than him knew Naruto better, and he would know if something had happened between him and Guren. Besides, he overheard the empress complaining about Naruto. The matter was that she had to practically rape him for them to make love. Moreover, if there was some truth in it, the empress would have been pregnant already. Naruto's oldest child would become king of the empire and a woman like her wouldn't permit another woman to carry her man's child. If it wasn't even for His Majesty's quick intervention, Samui would have been already. The woman was very possessive when it came to the king and didn't like when things were kept from her. What he would believe is that there was something going on between the emperor and that woman. He favored her more than anyone and spent more time with her than his own wife. Perhaps a factor that made it so was the fact that the woman was exiled from her village once it was discovered that she was His Majesty's friend. A wasn't forgiving, and if it wasn't for Yugito, he would have probably chosen for her to be E. Well, the emperor wouldn't have allowed that happen. Is there something on your mind? Guren demanded, looking at Haisuke with a hardened look on her face. She didn't at all like the look on his face, and she'd repeatedly told him to stop sticking his nose to things that didn't concern him. No, Haisuke responded quickly. No one really wanted to piss off a pregnant, sadist woman. Something like that would be inviting the chains of hell. Good, Guren said. What is he doing here? The usual, Haisuke responded. I have to drop him to the pit. Emperor, Prime Minister, excuse me. He was gone with gusts of winds after those words left his mouth. Guren took several steps towards Naruto before stopping at a safe distance. This is the first time you're punishing him. What changed? The emperor merely gave her a blank stare, telling her he wasn't going to respond to her question. Guren sighed, and spoke again. I'm going to take some time off until I give birth. My doctor recommended it as my work is stressing and that affects the development of my child. Are you asking me or telling me? Both, Guren responded a bit firmly, not cowering under his stare. She dealt with him long enough to know how to manage things with him, and she was going to leave this place with what she wanted. Who will be in charge while you're away? Naruto asked. He wasn't going to delegate anyone to fill the position. Besides, in all honesty, even when he knew that she was pregnant, he never expected her to leave her post. He's never trusted anyone to lead the empire other than Guren. It has always been her running the show since its founding. Conan has agreed to do it since it is only temporarily, and she wanted some time away from Nagato. It wasn't much of a change since Conan was already the chair of the Empire's council. She already had experience in leading since she led AM when Nagato was S. There was no one who could do better than her. I see. She will arrive in a week. After then, I will request you take me to Izu. Yukimaru was there studying under Karen, along with other children. The Uzumaki was teaching science and technology. No offense to you, but Izu is the safest and most relaxing place I can be given my state. Aside from that, Izu had defenses equipped to deal with anything. And the island was a destination for a holiday, and leisure, well the coast part of it anyway. Naruto didn't comment on anything, his left eye merely closed as he spoke his last words to Guren, appear before me when you want to leave. Guren frowned, she knew she was being dismissed, but for everything that she's done for him, she expected more from him than hearing her out. Is that all you can say to me? Normally, she wouldn't have said anything. Perhaps it was the pregnancy that was making her do it. Naruto's red eye opened slowly, the 6 blades clocked slowly for a few moments. You're not leaving today, the emperor simply said before his eye closed again. The pit. Haisuke threw a bound Kiba down a cold floor. They were underneath the Special Corps HQ where Naruto had created an abyss-like prison. The prison was used to hold criminals who had wronged the empire, or those who escaped In more simple ways, the pit was used to hold the dangerous of criminals. It was a maximum security prison that offered no chance of escape, no light, there was nothing but eternal darkness within the pit. It wasn't to say that other prisons weren't maximum security, it was just that even if someone like Orochimaru had been thrown inside the pit, he couldn't escape. The commander-in-chief of the Special Corps looked at the thorn on his side. Kiba. The Jonin was becoming a lot more troublesome recently, and it really bothered him that His Majesty took no appropriate action against the kind of foolishness that people like this one committed. He only soothed his soul in the thought that he dealt with others severely when His Majesty wasn't involved in the decision-making. Things were just different when it came to Konoha. Though, he was certain that Gurren wouldn't waste time in either fool if she had been the one to catch him. That woman showed no mercy to enemies of the Empire. He understood that K the Fool would spark more incidents like this into happening in regularity, and more tensions would grow between the Empire and the fallen village in Leaves. The calmness that existed now was nothing but calm before a disastrous storm. Yes, they knew that other villages were amassing their armies, training really hard to strengthen themselves in preparation for war. Even the likes of the small villages were preparing for war against the Empire. Heisuke wasn't worried about it though. He just wanted to happen soon so that they could end it quickly and move on to greater things. Perhaps it is then that His Majesty will rule things by himself and ensnare other nations under his command. It wasn't that he favored tyranny over all things. Peaceful resolutions haven't been occurring around all nations over the past couple of years, but nothing was happening. There was little success, just not enough to quench all thoughts of war against the Empire. Heisuke sighed and affirmed his stern gaze at the Konoha Jonin. I don't even know why your Hokage permits you to leave the village even when he knows what you're going to do. I've grown tired of your foolishness, and I do tell you, soon His Majesty will grow tired of you and you will turn into ash. Kiba snorted. Yeah right, he said sarcastically. If His Majesty could do it, why hasn't he done it already? I will tell you why he can't do it. He doesn't have the balls. Kiba was certain that his time was running out, but as long as there was time left on his watch, he wouldn't stop attempting to end that bastard. He got encouragement from the fact that with each attempt, he grew closer to the throne, and he knows, if he does end up K that fool, he would end up sitting on the throne and install himself as the emperor. The thought was deliciously pleasing and looked within his reach. But he had to K that bastard first. K Naruto was all he cared about for now. Heisuke blinked a couple of times when Kiba's words fully registered inside his head. He then burst out laughing, hysterically. Naturally, Kiba seethed at being laughed at like that after saying those words. What's so funny? He demanded while sending daggers towards the man who dared make a fool out of him. It took a few moments, but Heisuke finally did calm down from his laughter and wiped a few tears from his left eye. His expression changed quickly, and turned into a hardened look. A second later, his right feet stomped onto Kiba's gut, making the Inuzuka grind his teeth in pain. His Majesty is many things, but spineless. No, your pathetic excuse for a life means nothing to His Majesty. While I must give you some credit for your actions, do not mistake His Majesty's mercy as the lack of balls, fool. Kiba wasn't given more time to put on his retort because Heisuke then chose to drag him through the dark passages by his right foot. He could only muster out curses to the man who was dragging him like a dog. Well, it wasn't so bad since he liked dogs. But that wasn't the case. Let me go. Heisuke didn't stop until they reached a black door at the end of the passage. He pulled Kiba forcefully and him into the door before speaking. You've never been to this place, so I will tell you this. Even though you won't stay long until I pull you out, you won't enjoy the idea of returning here, ever again. Kiba was defiant. Do your worst. Unknown location. The world was turning into a state that Hagoromo had always feared it would when Naruto chose to become the emperor and install such a world. Yes, he might have been doing things without the use of force towards other nations, and his associates actually tried having peace talks with enemy nations, but the fear of the man was just too much for these people to accept any talk of peace. The empire was just too powerful that it could turn on anyone it liked at any given time and day. He knew that things were going to become messy again, and more would arise in this world. When those people working with Naruto started their march of peace, he had thought that it would actually work and peace would be reached without kunais being plunged into the guts and hearts of men and women, but he was wrong to believe that. Peace talks had failed, and only because of Naruto and his kingdom. While he had to change his perception of Naruto as a person, he didn't believe that his existence was good for the world. It turned out that Naruto wasn't that much of a bad person as he'd first thought. His idea to have the cages dance on his palm had been put to rest so that a door for peace talks could be opened, And now that it has failed, he is most likely to turn things into his liking rather than those people's liking, and he feared that, at the same time, he was rather glad for it to happen as it would put an end to the gathering dark clouds that gave him all kinds of itches. I can't even do anything, Hagoromo thought bitterly. That was the hard part of it. No matter how much he tried to communicate with the living world, he couldn't, and Naruto no longer appeared before him since he pushed his sky palace into the moon, making it part of it. He was now trapped within the moon, watching the world as it marches towards that path of destruction. In the moon, no one could reach him, and he couldn't reach anyone. There would be no traces of his existence or parts of Naruto within the moon once his time ends in the shinobi world. There would be no Zetsu to write history about such events, and these days, Naruto kept some things to himself, while carefully making sure that nothing about the secrets of his existence was taken elsewhere into the ears of men. At least that was a good thing. Must you always blame him for the things that have happened, and for the direction the shinobi world is headed towards? A voice suddenly spoke, alarming Hagoromo, who thought he was all alone. Hamura. Hagoromo recognized the voice, and looked at his brother carefully, trying to see if he was the real thing or not. Who knew if Naruto had just made this image to screw with his mind? It is I, brother, Hamura said, displaying no emotion on his slightly stern expression. Hagoromo was silent for a few moments as he processed a few thoughts. He'd actually thought that his brother was no more. It has been thousands of years since they last spoke, and after everything, he didn't think his brother would still be living. What do you mean by, must you always blame him? His eyes were narrowed at the brother of his. We both love peace, hence the choice we made years ago to seal Mother away. Though we have been apart for so long, I still love peace and wholeheartedly against any action that is and will be similar to Mother's, Hamura started calmly. What has happened to the shinobi world? The cages are greedy, and shinobi are filled with nothing but fear and hatred, lust for power and revenge. Who do you think is the cause for all these, brother? Obviously, Hagoromo couldn't say that it was Naruto who had caused it all. Shinobi were cruel by nature and flawed. He sort of blamed Naruto for the current situation, but the underlying problem was deeper than Naruto. Things became screwed up in the first generation of shinobi, not with Naruto. All these started when he made that choice that led to brothers hating each other. It was his sons that gathered men to fight their own personal battles. It was his choice that led to his sons fighting each other. If he had made a different choice, things would have turned up differently. It wasn't time to blame himself either. What did his brother even mean by saying he always blamed Naruto for what the world has become? Sure, he did blame the emperor for shaping the world into what it is today. People outside his kingdom couldn't rest because of fear for his power, and given his cold shoulder, as well as the unforgettable destruction of Konoha, one couldn't blame them for having uncertainty over the future with a man like Naruto still breathing. Even though he didn't do much, he was still alive, and it was only a matter of days before that man leaves the shadow of his throne and step into the light of the shinobi world, which he has been avoiding for the past years. If Hagoromo thought it carefully, technically, Naruto hasn't left his palace since he became human again. True, he made some appearance outside the palace, but there, real, him always stayed behind. It was almost like he was trapped inside the palace, but that wasn't the case. Naruto just didn't feel like leaving because it happens that the outside world is not interesting enough for him to grace it with his presence. Hagoromo cleared his thoughts and answered his brother's question. Shinobi have turned the world into what it is today. Other nations who aren't oriented to shinobi ways are able to live peacefully. The elemental nations are always embroiled into wars because of greed, hatred, and the lust for power. Naruto still played a role in some matters, but he wasn't going to say it, for now at least. Even though you don't say it, I know you are thinking about it, Hamura said as though he was reading Hagoromo's thoughts. The sage frowned in turn, but said nothing. You have changed your view of Naruto because he gave peace talks a chance to bear fruit. That man has never had the desire to be a tyrant who reigns over the nations, but the situation will most likely turn his empire into a beast that will subjugate other nations and absorb them. Hagoromo nodded. The other cages have refused peace in favor of fighting someone who told them he wouldn't do anything unless provoked, and they know he will keep true to his word. But their fear of him cannot allow them to accept him, no matter what he does. In all truth, Hagoromo had actually thought that Mai and Gaara would succeed in uniting the world, but that didn't happen. The other cages focused on becoming stronger in order to deal with what they perceive to be a threat. They are provoking him now, and these are doing nothing but poking him. Very soon, he will start acting and things will change forever after that, Hamura said. What he didn't know was whether they would change for the good or not. In this stage, one could never know, not unless Naruto made his first move. He was most likely waiting for this to happen, Hagoromo said a bit bitterly. He has the patience the size of his ego, and probably knew all attempts to unite the nations would fail. It will only be fun for him after they've rejected all peace proposals. Must you always assume the worst about him? Hamura asked, with a furrowed brow. He knew that his brother had some strong feelings towards the Uchiha, and he knew he couldn't say something nice about the emperor without cursing him in the same sentence. He hasn't given me much reasons to assume the good. Yet, you say he isn't that bad of a person, Hamura shook his head. Will you stop contradicting yourself, brother? Konoha. Kakashi sighed as he looked at the streets of the fully reformed Konoha. They weren't as empty as they used to be when they first arrived at this new land, and they weren't as gloomy as they used to be. The more the days added, and more the people appreciated their new home, but that didn't mean that they'd forgotten the old village that greeted them each morning with the faces of the Hokages, no, not the least. The old Konoha would forever be within their hearts, no matter what happened. Things had changed a bit. The barrier that separated the inner walls with the outer walls had become non-existent, but the walls remained intact. They just continued to expand the village outside those walls and made it their home. Rebuilding what had been lost and getting people from outside to settle in was a lot harder job for the Hokage and those who worked with him. Sometimes Kakashi pitied Shikamaru because of the amount of work he had to carry out at the end of each day. No one worked harder than the Jonin, all things considered, including his laziness. Re-establishing Konoha's place within the elemental nations hadn't been any easy task since they'd lost their place as the strongest hidden village because of the destruction. Konoha had fought so many wars and lost cages, but they'd never been so exposed and weakened to the state in similar to the one Naruto left them in after destroying the village. What made it pathetic was that it had just taken one man to destroy the once great village, and he did so without sweating or even lifting his fingers. It was an embarrassment to them, but other nations understood it well. There was nothing they could do even though it was just one man. Luckily for them, and with Shikamaru's intelligence, they'd managed to get small villages to work with them. Over the past couple of years, while rebuilding, they'd been training shinobi from other nations. These shinobi would make part of the Konoha military force and were being trained by Tsunade, Jiraiya and Sasuke as well as his friend. The training wasn't short of anything that Guy and Lee did. Sometimes Kakashi even winced at Sasuke's and Tsunade's brutality when training their students. Given their mass army training, other people felt safe into moving into Konoha and now the village had become even stronger than before. While they plotted to dismantle Naruto's kingdom and es it of its powers, they still kept some sort of a relationship with the kingdom. Sasuke did some high-paid missions for the kingdom while Shizune worked at the research facility in Izu, and Sakura did go there at some times. There was no better facility than the one owned by the Imperial Kingdom and all kind of information was there. It was only a pity that the ruler of Izu acted separately from the Imperial Kingdom, and there was not much information on the kingdom from the facility but there was still a lot that benefited them in many ways. Given that far-away look on your face, is it safe to assume that Kiba is at it again? Obito stated as he walked into the office within the largest building in New Konoha. He could see the reflection of Kakashi's face on the window he was looking through and he pretty much guessed the look since he knew the only time the Hokage turned that way was when he was thinking hard. Kakashi turned around to face his friend. He nodded before moving on to take a seat behind his desk while Obito settled on one of the chairs in front of the desk. He isn't returning and he left about a week ago. I can now assume that he was captured and put into prison this time, the sixth Hokage stated, mildly. His mother was just here and gave me a nasty look. She almost lost her temper and bit me. Obito chuckled at that while shaking his head. She will do it for real if she hears you saying that, he said, clearly amused by Kakashi's attempt for a joke given the current situation they were facing. Kakashi merely smiled. It wouldn't be anything less I deserve, especially if something does happens to him, he said, a bit bitterly, betraying the smile on his face. Obito nodded, and chose not to spare the sixth Hokage any punch. Well, you did allow her son to attempt to cane Naruto even when you know he couldn't do it and would most likely be taken into custody one day. If you were actually serious in stopping him from doing anything rash, you would have stopped him before his first attempt. No one smart enough actually believed that Kiba could be the emperor, but Kakashi was never that forceful in stopping him from doing it. Obito could remember the day Sasuke was told that Kiba had left Akamaru behind in pursuit of Naruto's head. The Uchiha had laughed so hard that he actually cried. Obito had never seen the stoic Uchiha laugh so hard, and since then, he's never laughed like that. To Sasuke, nothing more was hilarious than the arrogant Inuzuka trying to K the emperor. Obito knew well enough that Naruto couldn't be K by Kiba, but it wasn't within his right to stop the Jonin from doing as he pleased. She will most likely K me if something happens to him, Kakashi said casually, making Obito frown. Don't be so casual about your death, Kakashi, he lectured sternly. He knew well enough that his friend didn't want to fight Naruto but was forced because of the pressure from the villages, Iwagakure and Kumogakure. The reason they even managed to amass a strong army was because of the awaited battle with Naruto's kingdom, nothing more and nothing less. Kakashi shrugged. We will all one day, he said before focusing on the serious matter. But I do believe that since Kiba has been taken away, things are most likely going to get serious soon, which means we have to be ready for anything. Obito couldn't deny that. Kiba was some sort of a messenger between the two nations. When he was thrown out of the rice, the message read, not yet, but now it read, soon. Have you received word from either Iwa or Kumo? No. Kakashi shook his head. They are being secretive in the dealings as always. They only forced their way through when they wanted to learn Konoha's position in the future battles, and since then, they've kept the doors closed and eyes close to their activities. Good thing even they kept a low profile when it came to inner dealings of the village. Everyone is keeping the guards to their sea, Obito said in a resigned tone. So much has happened since his return from the S. While he had expected to burn in hell for all that he'd done, he'd been given a second chance to live again. He took the chance, but this world was in a shape and he couldn't treat it in the same manner as he did when he was still playing Madara. At least we already knew things would happen like this. But it doesn't change much, Kakashi pointed out the fact. Obito didn't deny it. The fact that they predicted that Iwagakure and Kumogakure would keep things tight while amassing their armies didn't change the fact that they still couldn't get all the information they wanted either of the village, and it was downright frustrating. I know, Obito frowned when the thought came, Kirigakure and Sunagakure still remain allied to Empire. Not to mention the ever-growing power Nagato has amassed for himself in the Rain Country. He wouldn't even be surprised if that man who still went on to call himself God chose to break away from the Imperial Kingdom given how powerful a Megakure has become. Both Konan and Nagato have become extremely powerful and that did them no favor. According to Sasuke, both Konan and Nagato possess portions of Naruto's power, and considering the fact that Naruto has never forced them to do his bidding, or tell them how to rule over a Megakure, I don't think they will ever betray him. Kakashi clearly had different thoughts to Obito. The letter didn't get into a debate about the matter though. Neither will Mei and Gaara, Obito added. But those two aren't our enemies. They've both assured me that they would rather be our allies than enemies, and wouldn't want to engage us in any battle. For someone who has seen so much, Obito knew that those words were cheap and you could never rule out anything in the shinobi world. Mei's marriage to Naruto meant that she was part of his kingdom and she was going to follow her husband, no matter what. Gaara was only going to do what he thought best for his village, and nothing else. Still, Obito left these kinds of thoughts to himself. Sasuke or Tsunade would say it better than he could. Obito sighed as he rubbed his temple. We have been fighting since we were just kids, Kakashi, he said. They were born in an era of wars, and ended up participating in the Third Shinobi World War. It was then that they lost things valuable to them, and he turned into the dark side, helped gladly by Uchiha Madara. Now, they've grown up, and still have time to plan for battles because one was indeed coming in the near future. When is it going to end? Kakashi didn't respond immediately. He took a thoughtful pose as he processed a few thoughts. The next battle will be our last, regardless of who ends up winning, he said. No matter what happened, the next was going to the last. There no longer will be any wars in this shinobi world. Let us just try to enjoy our lives a bit. Inwardly, Obito frowned. He couldn't do that, not without Rin. Kakashi was his friend and all that, but he wasn't Rin and no one could replace her. The fact that she wasn't with them meant there was a hole inside his heart, and he couldn't enjoy much with that hole still taking residence in his heart. How is the view from up here? A change of subject. Good, Kakashi added with a nod to emphasize. The civilian population has never been happy. Of course they're still ignorant of the outside world, but it doesn't matter since they won't get dragged into it anyway. Whether it was by choice or they were just fools, Kakashi didn't dwell much into it. The sixth Hokage preferred looking at the light side of things. They're in a different world than that of ours, Obito said. It is better to let them be fooled by their own ignorance as they will keep on smiling while we do what we must as shinobi. Keeping a clear head wouldn't be possible if they were breathing down their and asking questions that didn't concern them. While they were hooked in their perfect little world, they could seek to correct things in the outside. Sasuke appeared, in a buzz of lightning, before Kakashi could offer his response. Looking at Sasuke's expression, Kakashi commented dryly, "You look happy," he said. "You think?" Sasuke responded in the same dry tone before settling down on the chair at Obito's right side. "How are things at your end?" he asked, looking at the man on his left side. Both were part of the Uchiha clan, and had become the strongest warriors for Konoha. Given that, they commanded Konoha's shinobi forces. "Good," Obito stated simply. Sasuke nodded, before looking back at Kakashi. The Hokage beat him to a question though, how is Naruto doing? Of course, he still had some feelings for the son of his former sensei. Nothing would probably ever change that in this lifetime. Same as always, Sasuke said. Aside from chilling with the Mizukage when she visits, he doesn't do much other than sit inside his throne room. That isn't to say that it was he all does with his days, the emperor does other activities, it was just that relaxing in muted silence dominated his daily schedule. Were you successful? No. Sasuke frowned when responding to Obito's question. He bluntly said no. As far as I can tell, Naruto hasn't fought anyone since he battled Madara and me. He doesn't even train, even when he knows that there might be a war soon. The Uchiha see a frustrated figure as he went through that explanation. No doubt it displeased him greatly that Naruto didn't appear to be taking things seriously. The mood was completely turned by that, but Kakashi didn't allow it to last for long. Enough about Naruto, he said standing up. Shikaku can handle things from now on. What do you guys say about having a few bottles of sake? At this time of the day, Sasuke asked the same question Obito would have asked. Kakashi merely nodded. A megacure. At least no one ever lied by saying that finding peace was the easiest thing to do within this rotten world of shinobi. If someone had said otherwise, Nagato would certainly be cursing that man, while his body into pieces for spreading outrageous lies. Shinobi could understand each other. Laughable. Shinobi couldn't understand a damn thing. Nobody understood his course outside of a megacure and allies of the empire. The rest of the world saw him as an enemy who sought to control the world, an enemy of needed to be destroyed. They didn't understand him, hence the foolish thoughts. He'd always thought that Jiraiya had been naive when he said that he wished for an era where shinobi could understand each other and form one mind, one objective. He couldn't understand other people, and so he believed no one would understand him. Even so, he gave the idea of working peacefully to unite the world and create peace a second chance. His efforts hadn't been truly wasted on the notion. He had been fully focused on fortifying the Rain country and establishing a base of power while weeding out all enemies within. Pain didn't need much to say or to do to convince the people of Omegakure that he could give them peace, or that he was their savior. He'd already done what was needed of him. His people had unwavering faith in him and they trusted him well enough. Because of this, he was able to realize his ideal in them and provide the peace he'd so promised. The rain was his, and as such, the people understood, unlike those out there. The village that never stopped raining had dried up its wells and gave the sun a chance to dance in the sky. His people could now stare at the moon and the stars during the night. The dark clouds that always hid their view had been removed. Of course, this did nothing but inject a new wave of happiness to the people. As peaceful as it was the rice country, it was also peaceful within the rain country. Omegakure wasn't his only concern, but every town with the rain country was his concern, and through working tirelessly, he'd brought peace upon the country. But it was still not enough. The world that surrounded his country was a corrupted smoke that flickered across the borders of his country, and its rotten stink reached all the way to the confines of his tower, and he felt disgusted by it. He couldn't stand the intense that lurked within the shadows, he couldn't accept the world that glared with hateful intent at the peace within his home. As such, he hoped to liberate the shinobi world from its current leaders and shackles. Omegakure wasn't his at the beginning, but he liberated it from the hands of Hanzo and has now brought upon peace to the land. Its people revere his name as a god and his partner as their angel. Certainly, they've been nothing than heaven-sent beings to the country. Other nations would have to follow the same line as Omegakure. He'd given the thoughts of Mei and Gaara a chance, but nothing worked. Pain was going to do things his way, by the use of force. It didn't matter what anyone thought of the methods, and he wasn't going to concern himself with the inevitable objections of both Mei and Gaara. Both wouldn't agree to subdue these foolish cages who refused to back down despite not being threatened by anyone. A more interesting case would be what that man would think about the matter. So far, in all meetings they held, he only said one thing: do as you like. It wasn't the same for the rice country though. Over the years, he's taken more of an active role despite never leaving his palace. Regardless of what that man would think, Nagato was going to do things his way now. The Mizukage and Kazekage had their chance. It was only fair that he be given his chance to shape the world into what he wanted, a peaceful world. Nagato, Conan's voice pulled the Lord of the Rain country out of his thoughts. Nagato straightened his head to look at the blue-haired woman who was walking towards him, while he sat comfortable behind his desk in the confines of his tower. More problems have arisen. It wasn't anything surprising. The approach he took wasn't as peaceful as the approach the others were taking. He came across more resistance than anyone else, regardless. He extinguished any flames that dared to burn the peace he'd created for this country. No one succeeded in disturbing his peace. While Am may be in state of peace, there were foolish people who dared attempt to rebel against the rule of pain, not because he was any husher and evil striver, but simply because they sought to gain his power. Naturally, such foolishness was dealt with accordingly, and in a way that didn't show any weakness, but proved to all that he was indeed Kami. That was all that needed to be known, and he would move ahead to deal with it without wasting time. The line across the border towards Kusagakure, Conan reported. Kusagakure was allied with Konohagakure, and they gave them more problems than any other village. It was only the patience of Nagato that he hadn't reduced the village into a large crater. Nagato stood up. Let us go, he said. Conan waited until he took the lead before she followed him from behind. When do you think it will end? We've been finding for almost all our lives. At least Omegakure had found its long-last peace, and Conan was going to do everything in her power to ensure that the peace remained, even if it meant facing over hundreds of enemy shinobi just to ensure that her shinobi remained unharmed. It will end, Conan, Nagato said calmly. We know another fight is inevitable, yet that man told us not to prepare the rain for war. The rice hasn't been preparing for war either. What do you think is that? No one is ever excited about war, even the younger generation who do not know what war is. Allowing them to live freely without installing the thought of another war breaking out soon enables them to live peacefully. The only reason they've so far been experiencing peace was because the weight of fighting a war hasn't been placed upon their shoulders. Still, the people of Omegakure wouldn't have problems in going on a war as they believed that they couldn't lose should they be led by their leader. Nagato nodded in acceptance of Conan's response. If the nations fight with all their fighting power, there will be countless number of shinobi who s in the war, and that will only cause more pain and hatred. The god of Am paused for a moment before continuing. I'm not sure how the emperor plans to fight this, but I know he isn't going to s himself. He's yet to live his life, and these couple of years has only taught all of us a great lesson. You think he allowed them to do as they pleased so that they can learn something from it? Conan asked with a furrowed brow. Maybe, Nagato said, but that man doesn't believe in learning through mere words. Experience is the best teacher. Words come cheap and aren't most likely to be believed, but your own experiences can never lie to you. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.